The other day I was sitting there around watching TV and I turned on this strange show. I think it's something like Monster Quest, something like that. I don't know. Had these city slickers out in the woods trying to prove that there's things in the woods. Well, boys, that's what city slickers do. If you're a city slicker, you're trying to determine whether or not there's things in the woods. Well, let me tell you something, boys. We woods folk and country people, we know there's things in the woods. And we have evidence that'll prove that there's things in the woods. We just don't think it's safe to share it with city slickers because they ain't got enough sense to handle it. Now, the things that's in the woods can basically be divided into two major categories. There's natural things and there's supernatural things. Now, under the natural things category, I want to tell you a harrowing story that happened to my great uncle Sid one time. Sid's a putwooder. Y'all know what a putwooder is? Well, if you ever used any paper, they go out in the woods and they cut down pine trees, cut them in 4-foot lengths, load them on trucks, and they call it pulpwood. Some people say it's pulp, but it's pulpwood where I come from, and he was a pulpwooder. He took his truck down there and he'd cut a load of pulpwood and he'd haul it up to sell it. Now, in that 3 levels of theft, of stealing from the government, from your neighbor, and then you can. Well, that government side, that pulpwood's out there on that national forest. Just totally all right, as long as you don't get caught. Well, Sid went down there one day and he was cutting pulpwood and he walked off down the bottom and he come back and to his horror he found that something done got in his lunch and ate his sandwich and drank his pop. Now that scared the bejesus out of him. That probably was a natural thing. But among them things what's in the woods, there's supernatural things too. Down in East Texas, where I come from, we call them haints. There's haints in the woods. And a haint is a dangerous thing because they'll move in with him if you give them half a chance. Had a cousin one time had a haint moved in his house. It's always doing stuff like drinking their medicinal liquor. It'd be gone. The haint got it. It'd move stuff around. Eat hoe cakes it wasn't supposed to be it. That's a haint. Make all sorts of sounds in the night. Rocking chairs would move. Doors would open. My cousin got out of that house, let me tell you. Sold everything he had, sold that house, put what little bit he had left on the wagon, took a beating on that house. Folks down there is peculiar. They don't want no house with a haint in it. He loaded that wagon up and started down the road. A little voice in the back of that wagon said, "Well, we're off." That's a haint. Now, there's haints that run in the woods. And they generally hang out about dark brown cemeteries. Real dangerous like. When I was about 10, me and Floyd sat around the fireplace one time, roasting us some peanuts and just enjoying life with the old folk. One of my great uncles come in, old R.E. Boy, he was slam out of breath and just huffing and a-puffing. We was just scared to death, and we finally got out of him what had happened. He had seen a haint. He was riding his old horse down the road about dark, come up on the cemetery. That's the place them haints like to hang out. He got right there beside that cemetery, and he heard something. He looked down by his horse, and there's a little old feist dog about the size of a feist, just walking along beside him. He didn't think nothing about it. Went on down past the cemetery, but that dog joined him at that cemetery, and that's a bad sign, because that's where haints hang out. He rode that horse a little ways down the road, and he looked down, that little old dog about the size of a feist, about the size of a collie. Good blue tick hound. He thought, man, that's strange. Said, I done seen that thing. I know. He was smaller than that, so he kind of kick that old horse's pace up. Figured he'd just leave that dog behind. Lord of mercy, he looked down, that dog done about twice as big as it was before, and he knowed for sure it was Haint then. He spurred that horse, and that old horse was running headlong fast as he could go. Uncle R.E. looked down, that old dog about the size of a good yearling calf, just trotting along beside him, that old horse out of breath. He looked at us, he said, man, he said right then, he said, I knowed I was got by Haint. And he said, I'm lucky to be alive. And I said, well, Uncle R.E., what happened? He said, well, I jumped off that horse, and I said, if you can't outrun him, by God, I can. Yeah, that horse ain't been seen since. Sure enough, boys, they's Haints and they's Aints. And if it ain't a Haint, everything's all right. But if it is a Haint, it ain't time to stick around and see if it's a Haint. Understand my meaning?